In our last couple of lore videos, we looked at how the Ersatan Civil War began, as well as outlining the early stages of warfare on the surface of Ersata, and then some aspects of space warfare. In this video, we'll look at some of the defining characteristics of the Manosans and Kambe's relationships with other worlds. I've already alluded to the fact that during the over 130,000 years of the Ersata Civil War, the Alpha Quadrant of the galaxy was greatly shaped by the relationships that other worlds had with Ersata's two races. These relationships were sometimes impacted by direct warfare, and even more far-reaching than this was how other worlds reacted to and planned for the continual threat of the Manosans and the Kambes. As we've mentioned, the world of Aquatia was the first one to have significant relationships with the Ersatans. The Manosans established a good working relationship with the Aquatians, including building settlements on an island there. While this mutualistic relationship was not typical for all other worlds, its pattern of development gives insight into how, even in good situations, interactions with the Ersatans greatly altered the development of other worlds. It should be apparent that these altered developments most likely had huge unintended consequences for both of those worlds, as well as for the Ersatans as well. First contact between the Manosans and the Aquatians occurred around 134-832 BCE and was handled with a great deal of restraint. This kind of restraint was definitely not exercised by the Kambe when they interacted with other worlds, but it wasn't usually properly exercised by the Manosans when they came to meet with other worlds. Because the initial intent of the Manosans was only to hide their warships in the Aquatian system after they'd fled from Ersata, they didn't even initiate radio communication with the Aquatians. It was the Aquatians who initiated this communication with the Manosans. After the Manosans' vessels had been discovered in deep space inside of the Aquatian star system, this communication moved forward with deliberation and very much at a pace set by the Aquatians. Even the first face-to-face meetings took place in deep space, and at a time of choosing of the Aquatians. Any objective considering of this first contact by the Manosans has to recognize that they were very careful and respectful about this process. However, given the large technological gap in development between these two species, it was still probably a mistake for the Manosans to have built settlements on Aquatia itself. This led to a greater degree of entanglement with Aquatian society, and this could have been avoided. This high degree of influence from the Manosans resulted in heavy-handed influence of the Manosans over the Aquatians. As a part of the early agreement between the Manosans and the Aquatians, the Manosans shared their technology in exchange for permission to build a settlement on Aquatia. This ended up being the start of substantially altering the course of the Aquatians' development. Again, the Manosans did this with the best of intentions. But whatever the Manosans' intentions were, their mere presence on Aquatia resulted in a parent-child-like dynamic forming. It was unintentional, but it seduced the Aquatians to seek to emulate the Manosans as opposed to seeking their own natural path of development. An example of this is the very first trading of electronic and computer technology, both hardware and software, and how it greatly impacted the business functioning of Aquatian's economy. I'd like to take a moment to illustrate how this would play out by first of all talking about how things occur on our world in the 21st century. Obviously, as computer technology advances, international trade causes differences in various coding systems to be minimized. There is an organic process that drives these changes. The increased efficiency of the Manosans' computer chip designs and manufacturing methods had far-reaching impacts on the way the Aquatians did things. All markets, regardless of where they fall between socialistic to capitalistic, tend to reach various forms of equilibrium across a period of time. However, when significant developments occur, the functioning balance in the market will be substantially altered. When these developments are naturally occurring, new discoveries, improved technology, innovation, a self-correction occurs in these markets, and it usually happens in a less chaotic manner. Although, even in a situation like this, at least some level of chaos will be introduced. But when such a large leap forward in computer chips was given to the Aquatians, the technology market was thrown off balance in a major way. Some Aquatian companies received immediate advantages over their competitors. These disproportionate advantages did not happen because these new chip designs weren't equally made available to all chip manufacturers. But the companies that could afford to quickly alter their manufacturing methods, building new manufacturing equipment and plants, getting different kinds of raw materials, retraining their employees, and things like that, this resulted in these companies being able to significantly outpace their competition. Something to consider is that the reasons that some companies couldn't quickly alter their methods often had little to do with their talents, resources, or even willingness to change. Quickness of this source can easily be due to factors outside the control of any particular company. One instance of this was that some of the larger chip manufacturing companies in Aquatia had recently spent large amounts of capital to upgrade their manufacturing facilities, so they did not readily have the funds available to do it again so quickly. These companies planned to implement these changes to their methods, but because they had to do this in a slower way than some of their competitors, they lost significant amounts of their market share. Another factor to do with differing preferences and circumstances of the consumers, both corporate and individual, to which a company is serving. Many differences in customers were regional or size in nature. The company whose customers were in a position to purchase these new computer chips on a broad scale obviously benefited an immediate competitive advantage. This, again, is not due to the company being purposely quick to change, but they happen to have a large base of customers who are in a position to change their purchasing habits and to do so right away. In our next lore video, we'll discuss other aspects of how the Manosans unintentionally altered the natural development of the Aquatians. We will also briefly point out how other worlds that interacted with their Ersatans sometimes experienced far greater disruption to their worlds and societies than did the Aquatians. As we've mentioned before, most of the worlds in the Alpha Quadrant of the galaxy were influenced one way or another by the incredibly long Ersatan Civil War. The Ersatan Chronicles are a series of epic science fiction novels. For further lore information about these novels and the universe in which they occur, keep watching for upcoming lore videos. Better yet, please begin reading these novels. This series begins with the Unknown Allies trilogy. The first book in this trilogy is the Ersata Chronicles: Binary Complications. This novel is planned to be published this fall. The lore of this universe will hopefully be interesting and rich to many of you. Finally, as is stated at the beginning or end of virtually every YouTube video ever seen, please like and subscribe to this channel to help the development of these ongoing stories. Until next time, be safe.